On August 19, 2025, after spending 43 years on death row, Kayle Barrington Bates was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison. In this video, we'll uncover what happened, his last meal, and his last words. It all started on an ordinary workday, June 14, 1982. Janet Renee White, a 24-year-old office worker, had just settled in at her desk when Kayle Barrington Bates walked through the door. She didn't know him, but within minutes, she was fighting for her life, hard. In the beginning, it felt like any other Monday. Around 12 p.m., Renee parked her car outside the quiet Lynn Haven home she shared with her husband, Randy, and the sunlight bounced off the hood as she stepped inside. She kicked off her shoes, shrugged off the heat, and headed straight for the TV. Days of Our Lives was already starting. That hour, from 12 to 1, was hers. It always had been. For her, it was a small ritual in a busy world. While watching TV, Randy made her a sandwich, like he always did, and she smiled without looking away from the screen. When the clock crept toward 1, she stood, smoothed her skirt, and grabbed her purse. Another routine, another drive back to the office. Randy walked her to the car, and as she pulled out of the driveway, she gave a quick honk. He waved, smiling. She smiled too. And then she turned the corner and disappeared from view, never knowing that someone was already inside that office building, waiting, watching, and ready. Just after 1, she hastily walked back into the office to answer the phone, and she wasn't paying attention to her surroundings. On the other end of the line was her friend, Geraldine Gilchrist. Renee picked up with a smile. "State Farm, this is Renee." But when she looked up, she saw him standing in the corner. Geraldine heard it first, the tightness in Renee's voice, that sudden breathlessness, and then full-blown screaming. And with a sharp click, the line went dead. Geraldine sat frozen for a second, then instinct kicked in and she called the police. Just a couple of minutes after the call disconnected, Renee's boss, Jim Dickerson, also walked back into the office after his lunch break. But immediately something felt wrong. The blinds in his office had been drawn closed, his calculator was unplugged, and the back door was cracked open. And the most chilling part? There was a blood trail leading outside. Renee's white car was still there, but the silence inside the office was unsettling. But Jim didn't even have time to process what was happening, because at that time, the police were already pulling up. Officers briefly looked into the office, but when they saw the mess left behind and the blood leading outside, they immediately started to search the area. And it didn't take them long to find her. Her body was hidden just 50 feet away in a wooded area behind the agency. And the scene they walked into was just brutal. Her clothes were torn and her face was smeared with blood. Whoever attacked her hadn't stopped at just one blow. At the autopsy, at least 30 wounds were found. Renee had been stabbed twice in the chest. Her head was bruised on both sides, and the damage spread down, around her eyes and even across her legs, where they also found male DNA. There was also a raw mark around her neck, like someone had grabbed or dragged her. It was clear that she hadn't gone quietly. Someone had made sure of that. And then he appeared. Kayle Bates walked out of the woods like nothing had happened, with some cattails in his hand. But something felt off. Mud was streaked across his shirt. His wet jeans were clinging to his legs, and there was blood on him. Faint, but it was there. When an officer stopped him, he didn't resist. He just told them that he wanted to get back to his delivery truck. His truck sat behind the agency, parked in the wrong spot. He drove an 18-foot Air National Box truck for a paper company, with Lynn Haven as just another stop on his route. Except this time, he didn't just deliver paper. This time, he left behind something else entirely. Janet Renee White, a 24-year-old woman, dead in the dirt behind her office. At the police station, officers started asking questions, trying to make sense of who they were dealing with. Kayle didn't seem like the kind of man who got in trouble. He had played sports as a kid, went to church, and joined the National Guard. After high school, he worked as a delivery driver for a paper company, got married, had a daughter, and eventually bought a house. Life was hard but steady, until it wasn't. Everything began to change after he was passed over for a promotion to sergeant in the Guard. The reason? His learning disabilities. With another child on the way and the bills stacking up, the pressure built up until something inside him cracked. And when the questioning started, so did the lies. At first, Kayle denied everything. He claimed he parked his delivery truck behind the office to avoid his supervisor. He said he was just taking a lunch break and then picked some cattails to decorate his house. And the blood on his shirt? He blamed it on his gum disease. But then came the turn. When one of the detectives asked him to empty his pockets, Kayle hesitated, then pulled out a woman's ring and placed it on the desk. It wasn't just any ring. Renee's husband later confirmed it belonged to her. Kayle then quickly changed his story. He now claimed he had stopped at the office just to ask for directions. He said Renee didn't have the answers he needed, so he left. He then found the ring outside in front of the office and he picked it up before going into the woods to get the cattails. He claimed he saw her body on the way out, but when he approached her and realized that she was dead, he panicked and ran. But when police confronted him with more evidence, his story changed once again. He now claimed he had seen a white man attacking Renee and he tried to step in. That man, he said, punched him in the mouth, so he ran into the woods to get away. And even after that, the stories didn't stop changing. When confronted again, Kayle yet again came with a different version of what happened. This time he said that he walked into the office to ask for directions, and though Renee was friendly at first, something made her snap. She got angry. He claimed that she sprayed him with mace, and when he tried to grab it from her, they struggled. That's when she allegedly grabbed a pair of scissors and, according to Kayle, she accidentally stabbed herself during the fight. He now also admitted that he tried, but failed, to force himself on her. But he swore he never took her wedding ring. But that version didn't last either. When it came time to testify, Kayle backpedaled. He denied making any of those earlier statements. Now he claimed he had eaten lunch, fell asleep in his truck, then woke up and returned to the office to ask to use the phone. According to this new story, he walked in, saw the place was a mess, and turned to leave. That's when he said he saw Renee's body and ran. Not because he was guilty, but because he panicked. But the jury didn't buy any of it. In 1983, he was convicted of kidnapping, armed robbery, attempted sexual battery, and first-degree murder, and they recommended the worst sentence possible: death. But the case didn't end there. Over the next 4 decades, Kayle's lawyers filed appeal after appeal, and some with success. They argued that the court made a mistake, both legally and factually, by ignoring the important evidence that was shown during Kayle's resentencing. His defense team had shared reasons why he didn't deserve the death penalty, but the judge didn't properly take that into account when deciding his sentence. These reasons included that the murder wasn't premeditated. According to them, Kayle's abilities in reading, writing, and basic math were sitting right at the edge of what doctors call the borderline range of intellectual disability. His scores placed him in the bottom few percent. What most kids mastered by age 9 or 10, Kayle was still struggling with in his late teens. His defense team argued that he couldn't understand the gravity of his actions because of his low IQ, and that he was under a lot of stress because he didn't receive the promotion to sergeant, because he was about to have a second child, and because the bills were stacking up higher and higher. However, the Florida Supreme Court upheld his conviction, but they did order a new sentencing hearing. At that second hearing, another jury listened, and another judge weighed the facts. But once again, Kayle was sentenced to death. In 1989, Florida's governor signed his death warrant for the first time, but before the execution could happen, the courts intervened again, this time ruling that his defense lawyer had done a poor job at sentencing. They decided that Kayle would get a third chance. Again, a new jury and a new sentence. But again, the outcome was the same: death. Then, decades after the trial, Kayle made a new claim. He said he had recently learned that one of the jurors might have been related to Renee. He wanted to interview that juror, hoping it might lead to a new appeal. But there was a problem. Florida law requires those requests to be made within 10 days of the verdict, unless there's a clear and timely reason for the delay. Kayle didn't say when or how he found out about the alleged connection, and the judge didn't buy the excuse. In 2024, the Florida Supreme Court weighed in again. They said Kayle hadn't proven good cause for the 40-year delay. So the verdict stood, and so did the sentence. And the next year, his final death warrant was signed. After 43 years, he finally had a date, August 19, 2025. That day, Kayle woke up at 5:15 a.m. Like many on death row, he had the option to request a final meal, something familiar, comforting, or symbolic. But Kayle declined. He didn't want anything. Instead, he sat quietly in his cell, waiting. He had 3 visitors that morning: his daughter, his sister, and his brother-in-law. And while he could have met with a spiritual advisor before the execution, he chose not to. As the hours passed, he didn't speak much. He just waited for what was coming. By 6 p.m., he was strapped to the gurney inside the Florida State Prison. Just a few feet away, Renee's husband, Renee White, sat among the witnesses, still grieving after all these years. He said justice had taken far too long. "This has just been hanging out there for 43 years, he told reporters, worried that either he or Kayle might die before the execution ever happened. But now, with the end finally in sight, Randy said he could let go of at least part of the pain. "At least this part I can put behind me and not think of it again," he said. "I can be done with it." The execution process began. When asked if he had any final words, Kayle simply said no. No words for his loved ones, no message for the victim's husband, and no apologies. At 6:17 p.m., he was pronounced dead. Kayle Barrington Bates was 67 years old. What do you think? Has justice been served? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.